churning the winter mud, Russian artillery moves into position in the grinding battle for the Donbas. Russia's high command is determined to occupy the entire region in eastern Ukraine.
Russian troops continue offensive operations in the Donetsk area. Comprehensive fire damage has been inflicted on units of the Ukrainian armed forces along the entire section of the line of contact.
But Russia's offensive has been stalled for months. One focal point of its failed attacks is the town of Bakhmut. Remorseless Russian shelling has made the city almost uninhabitable.
When I go to sleep, I pray to God to wake up. And when I do, I say thank you that I'm alive.
I have a splinter injury here, but the wound has already healed. A month has already passed, so everything is fine. We went to Konstantinovka, got stitched up there. The shard was hot, I pulled it out. It burns very hot, but I pulled it out. Of course, it was bad.
Indiscriminate attacks on towns and cities have become a hallmark of Russia's faltering invasion. But the Ukrainians are fighting back. These helicopter pilots fly low and fast to avoid anti-aircraft missiles before striking enemy targets. Every day, Ukrainian forces exact a heavy toll on the invaders. And Western support for Kyiv is ramping up. British Challenger tanks like these could soon be in Ukraine. Other Western countries are also considering sending main battle tanks. The war is set to become more costly for Russia still.
Our correspondent Sonia Falnikar joins us from Kyiv. Bring us up to date on the latest from the front line in eastern Ukraine.
Well, there's been no significant let-up in the fighting along the front lines in the south and in the east in Ukraine. There have been reports today in the Ukrainian media of explosions overnight in the Kherson region. There are reports of a strike in Kramatorsk hitting a roadway, killing 2 people. But of course, much of that intense fighting we're seeing is in and around Bakhmut, as we saw in your report. This is where Ukrainian forces for over 5 months now have been fighting off attacks by Russian soldiers as well as fighters of the Russian paramilitary group, the Wagner group. And much of that fighting now has shifted to Soledar, a salt mining town northeast of the city. Now, Ukrainian officials have been saying that they remain in control of Soledar, but Russian officials have been contradicting that claim. So I think as the war kind of approaches its first-year anniversary, we're seeing that the fighting in the east is really now over ever smaller pieces of territory, and there's really seems to be little advancement on both sides.
Stay with us, Sonia, because one of the EU's top officials, Franz Timmermans, has been in Kyiv for talks, and one of our reporters asked him about more weapons for Ukraine.
Well, I think Ukraine deserves all our support, also militarily, because the brutality with which the Russians are operating has no bounds. This is not just a war about Ukraine. This is not just Russia trying to grasp territory from a neighboring country. This is a war about the future of Europe. This is a war about the future of democracy vis-à-vis autocracy. And the fact that the Ukrainian people fight with such determination and such passion for their freedom, it should be a clear signal to the European Union that we should support them with every means we have. So I think it is a logical step undertaken by France, Germany and others to support Ukraine militarily with these armoured personnel carriers.
Sonia, Ukraine has been pleading for more weapons for months. How does Kyiv see these promised arms from its Western partners?
Well, I think the news of these deliveries, these armoured fighting vehicles from Germany and France in particular, is very welcome in Kyiv. You're right, Ukraine has been asking for them for months, and they're urgently needed, especially in the east, to defend that front line and push the Russian forces back. But at the same time, analysts in Ukraine have been saying that these vehicles alone will not prove to be game changers. They will certainly help in offensive operations. But what Ukraine needs, they say, is more powerful weapons, especially as the country, warns of a possible new Russian offensive. Possibly in the spring.
Thank you, Sonia Falnikar in Kyiv.